Hello everyone, this is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was put in charge of the Kunoichi Inn and ended up in chaos with Tsunade Senju, Sakura, Ino, Hinata, Tenten, Tamari Shizune, Anko Mitarashi and Kurenai Yuhi Part 2. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. Naruto dashed through the forest back to the village. He jumped from one tree branch to another. His mind was racing. Questions plagued his head. He and Tamari were getting on so well, so why did she suddenly wanted to bite his head off? He shook his head. Sakura was the same. He remembered the many times he conversed with his teammate years ago. She was nice one minute and violent the next. It was the same deal with Tsunade. We're all women like this. For the life of him, he would never understand women. You and me both, Kit. You and me both. Kyuubi agreed. But Temari's response to his simple question only manages to remind him of how much people loathed him. Was he really that despicable and annoying? You have your days, Kit. Kyuubi answered him. I wasn't talking to you. Naruto replied back. Who else are you talking to? Yourself. I don't think I can handle hearing more voices in here, Kit. Kyuubi mocked him. Or could it be that insistent hawk hovering above you? Naruto looked up. True enough, there was a summoning bird hovering above him. Naruto frowned. It seemed he was being summoned towards the Hokage Tower. Kurenai frowned at the scene before her. She schooled her features well as to not give away any emotion she felt. She had been summoned towards the Hokage Tower. At first she had no clue as to why she was being summoned. She assumed it was for a mission, but looking at the people before her, gave her a pretty good idea as to why she was here. Tsunade was sitting at her table. Before her left stood Kurenai, in the middle were 5 Anbu nins and to her right stood 3 civilian villagers. Tsunade watched them with keen eyes. This did not look well. She had her elbows on her desk and her fingers were steepled together in a brooding manner. She watched the people before her, trying to gauge out their intentions. It seems Naruto's return has been an unwelcomed one. The silence in the room was interrupted when the blonde shinobi in concern entered the room. Automatically the 3 villagers voiced out their outrage. Bakemono. Oni. The other villager on the other hand just spat on his direction, making Tsunade raise one of her delicately shaped eyebrow. The Anbu guards immediately blocked the path of the 3 outraged villagers who were trying to maim Naruto. Naruto merely scoffed. He felt Kurenai immediately approached his side, resting a hand on his shoulder trying to reassure him. He immediately stiffened from the contact but forced his body to relax, which was gone unnoticed by Tsunade. Tsunade wanted to laugh at the villagers' antics. She had called the Anbu in her office not to try and hold the civilians at bay but to try and stop Naruto in case he gets out of hand. It seemed she never really needed the Anbu, for Naruto merely glared at the 3 and they immediately stopped their tirade. Naruto, being in a bad mood, was not going to put up with any of this crap any longer. He merely glared at the civilians' direction. It wasn't really his fault when a little bit of his killing intent leaked off. It was more Kyuubi's fault. He knew the demon wanted nothing better than to escape his prison and maul the people before him. When the civilians felt the killing intent directed at them as well as the killer glare Naruto threw, they immediately halted. It was easy to pretend that they can harm the Jiraichiki. Delusions will do that. The civilians knew they didn't stand a chance against a demon container with the power of the 9-tailed fox, but they could only try. They were spurred on by the fact that there were Anbu guards in the immediate area, added by the fact that they were before the Godime. They knew that the Godime will never let anything happen to them. They also knew that the bastard demon child will not do anything to them before one of the great Sanins. But feeling the killer intent leaking off the demon child was enough to stop them. One of them visibly sweated and felt that their bladder was once again about to relieve itself. As much as all this amused Tsunade, she knew she had to stop this little debacle. Stop it, Naruto. Tsunade said to the blonde dismissively. Naruto merely looked at the blonde woman and did as he was told, giving her a neutral stare. You summoned, he replied back. He watched the other three villagers from the corner of his eye. He then recognized one of them from the market square. Naruto, you're summoned here before me to answer complaints about your person. Tsunade sighed. As she waited for him to respond, she was met by silence. Godime-sama, that demon before you had just threatened to kill us. One of the braver three responded angrily. Is this true? Tsunade questioned Naruto. No, it is not, Tsunade-sama. Kurenai defended the blonde. Naruto and I were minding our own business when these low-lives attacked us. We did not, protested one. That demon is a menace and deserves to die, protested the other. Enough, Tsunade shouted, her voice bouncing off the walls. Shizune then entered the room with Taunton in her arms. She had heard Tsunade's stressed voice and immediately came to her aid. After the brief discussion with Naruto, Shizune decided to return to the Hokage Tower when Kurenai was summoned. She was hoping to speak with Tsunade about Naruto, but it seemed it will have to wait. She glanced at Naruto's direction and she felt her heart ache. He was wearing one of his many masks, and she couldn't blame him. She could feel that Naruto was trying to restrain himself from defending himself from the villagers' wild allegations. She had heard the shouts the villagers aimed at him from outside Tsunade's office. She watched as her sensei rubbed her temples in frustration. Kurenai, I take it you were with Naruto at the time of the alleged threat? Tsunade asked. Hi. Kurenai nodded. What exactly did Naruto do next? Tsunade asked. He did nothing at first. He didn't even try and defend himself as they began to throw rotten vegetables at him. Liar. Tsunade glared at the villager's outburst and motioned for Kurenai to continue. He didn't do anything at all. Until one wayward tomato hit me on my shoulder. Kurenai explained as she rubbed her shoulder, the part where the tomato hit her. That was when Naruto got angry and threatened them. I see. She then looked at one of the Anbu guards. I take it you were there at the time too? She asked. Hi Godime-sama. The Anbu wearing a monkey mask replied. I came to the area as soon as I felt the enormous chakra and killing intent the youth was radiating. What happened? Tsunade questioned. After he had threatened the plaintiffs, he just simply walked away. The Anbu explained. Now in your honest opinion, do you think that Naruto would have harmed them? Tsunade continued her questioning, amazed that Naruto would walk away after such an event. She herself wouldn't have walked away without setting an example or two if she was faced with such prejudice. In my honest opinion Godime-sama, he would have. But then again if I was treated with the same kind of animosity I wouldn't simply have walked away. I would have followed through with the threat, the Anbu answered. Which was true. As a shinobi, people should treat them with the respect they had earned. Setting a simple example would prevent future conflicts down the road. The Anbu's answer both shocked and frightened the civilians. Did the Anbu realize what type of monster they were defending? Right then. Naruto, do you have anything to say to defend yourself? Tsunade asked, trying to gauge out Naruto's emotion. But she didn't succeed. Naruto had learned to school his emotions well while he was aware has it always been there and that she had never noticed to begin with. I stand by my words. Naruto replied back as he glared at the villagers. He doesn't care what they do him. He could take the abuse, but he will not let their hatred involve another person or being. They are innocent. They shouldn't suffer just because they were in his company. Tsunade then remained quiet. Everyone in the room awaited for her decision. Shizune and Kurenai waited nervously for her decision while Naruto remained neutral. Shizune and Kurenai had never seen Tsunade so pensive and so serious, especially when it involved Naruto. Normally she would just end up giving Naruto a love tap punches, to teach him a lesson and that would be all. But it seems the whole ordeal that Naruto was involved in was a more serious crime. Very well then, you three are under arrest. Tsunade said towards the shocked civilians. What? What for? They all blurted out, flabbergasted by the sudden turn of events. for inciting a riot in a public place. Tsunade explained before giving the Anbu guards a nod to take the 3 villagers towards the holding cells. But he's a demon, protested one. Enough. Guards, take them to the holding cells. Let them stew for the crimes they have committed. Tsunade ordered. She will not tolerate any disobedience from her decision. She will also not tolerate anyone bearing ill will towards her precious people. As for the rest of you, you may leave. Naruto, you shall stay. I still need to speak to you about your behavior. Tsunade ordered the rest of the people in the room who were reluctant in leaving, especially Kurenai and Shizune, who wanted to try and talk to Naruto. Naruto merely remained silent but gave a curt nod. As Kurenai and Shizune walked past him on their way out, Shizune gave Naruto a reassuring pat on his shoulder, which made Naruto slightly jump. The most reaction Tsunade had seen from the loud mouth upon entering her office. Shizune too became concerned from the way Naruto reacted. That was twice now that Naruto reacted in such a peculiar way. When Naruto was in his hyper mood, he welcomed affection of any form, whether it was from Sakura or Tsunade's love taps, daily punches, hugs or teasing. This was another side of Naruto that she had never seen before, and it bothered the young medic Nin. Tsunade observed Naruto through narrowed eyes. Naruto had always been so hard to decipher. He was like a jigsaw puzzle. Each piece was surprising and contained a certain air of mystery. Just when she thought she had figured out one piece, she finds out that it doesn't even fit the enigma that is Uzumaki Naruto. She finds it frustrating, yet she finds she is drawn to him more because of it. Naruto has not been acting himself the moment he had stepped into her office, which screamed at her that something was definitely wrong with him. While she had always prayed to see Naruto to become more mature and somewhat subdued, she had to admit that looking at him now at the very form of her wish, quiet, more subdued, well-behaved and most of all respectful, wasn't what she liked. In other words, she didn't like Naruto the way he is now. She almost wanted to grab Naruto by the shoulders and shake him until he returned to his usual hyperactive self, or at least beat some sense into him. The moment the 2 women left, she had begun to think of how to talk to him since he wasn't responding at all, not even to Shizune. The room became silent. Naruto and Tsunade ended up staring at each other, both maintaining eye contact. Both pair of eyes revealed nothing from their respective owners. Finally, sick of the growing silence which proved to be deafening to both parties, Naruto decided to speak. Eager to just get everything over and done with. The sooner the day was finished, the sooner he could forget everything and move on. But you haven't moved on, Kit. You still haven't forgotten, Kyuubi commented from the back of his mind. Naruto couldn't help but agree. He couldn't forget. There will always be something that triggers such unwanted memories from his mind that continued to haunt him. There were nights that he woke up screaming and covered in cold sweat. The nightmares were the worst of all things he had experienced. It relives everything. He was so engrossed in his thoughts that he didn't notice Tsunade had gotten up from her seat and was now standing before him, her eyes fixed on him. Naruto. She tentatively whispered the youth's name. She could see he was preoccupied with his thoughts. She wondered what was going through his mind at that very moment. It couldn't have been anything pleasant, judging from the frown that was now forming on his face. Watching him now, she couldn't stop herself. She had denied herself the day before when he first arrived. She will not deny herself now. Not when she needed him right now. So without preamble, she wrapped her hand around him and engulfed him in a warm embrace. He remained still at first, unmoving, until he finally returned her gesture. For Naruto it was quite painful for him to reciprocate, to drag himself away from his tormenting thoughts to respond to her kind act. It wasn't until he felt Tsunade's warmth did he realize this was exactly what he needed at the moment. He buried himself against her, savoring her warmth, basking in the comfort she provided. Tsunade held Naruto. There was something between them. Something that was better left unspoken. As she held him close, she came to a realization that she had indeed missed him. She had wanted to comfort him and drive whatever it was hurting him away. to block and wipe all his pains away. It took her a while to realize that her blouse was slowly getting drenched, but she didn't care. All she cared about was the blonde in her arms that made her live again. Naruto was lost in the moment. He didn't realize tears began to free themselves from his tormented eyes. From his tormented soul. It was far too late to stop them. All he thought about was how weak he was. How despicable he was. Tsunade began to rock him back and forth, cooing soothing words in his ear. "It's okay, Naruto, you're going to be okay. I'm here for you," she cooed in all honesty. She didn't realize that she too had began to shed tears for the blonde in her arms. They stayed like that for quite some time, never realizing how much time had gone by. For Naruto, letting himself go helped him a lot. He slowly began to feel much better, knowing the person who held him cared for him. To him it was enough to stop his tormenting thoughts. He hesitantly let go of her and looked at Tsunade's tear-streaked face. "Thank you, Ba-chan. I needed that," he replied back softly. Tsunade on the other hand was touched by the gentleness of his voice and could only respond by just giving him a playful slap on the shoulder. "You darn brat," she replied back as she recomposed herself, smiling as she saw him grin at her. Naruto suddenly jumped when he remembered he was supposed to meet his old friends. "Damn it, I'm late." He quickly wiped the tears from his eyes and tried to recompose himself while Tsunade watched him with amused eyes. It was great to see he was alright. "Sorry about this, Ba-chan," he told her while he rubbed the back of his head. The last thing he wanted was for Tsunade to worry about him. He was glad that Tsunade had chosen his side. "Baka, I told you not to call me that," she chided him. "I'm your Hokage. Show me some respect, brat." Naruto only gave her his patented foxy grins before he quickly left. "Thanks again, Haim-chan," as he dashed towards the exit and disappeared from her office. Tsunade just stood there as she watched the retreating youth. "Haim-chan," she asked herself. It's been so long since she has been called that. Far too long. She then smiled. She liked that. "Korean barbecue place, please someone tell me what the place is called." At the Korean barbecue place, the guys were all gathered at one table. Team 8 and Team Guy were present. Choji didn't waste any time ordering everything on the menu. Shikamaru was conversing with Neji while Kiba was teasing Lee while Shino to agree with him. It was then that Kiba had remembered his encounter with Naruto. "Oi guys, you'll never guess who I bumped into this morning on my way to pick up Akamaru," Kiba exclaimed excitedly. He watched as all of his friends' attention was now on his person. "Oh, tell us, Kiba-san," Lee replied back. He was curious what youthful news his friend was to deliver. The rest of the guys just waited for Kiba to answer, giving them their rapt attention, all except for Shikamaru, who had already known who Kiba was talking about. Shikamaru just let out a loud sigh of boredom which caught his best friend's attention. Choji knew that if Shikamaru was bored it means he had already figured it out. "Who is it, Shikamaru?" asked Choji. "It's someone troublesome," Shikamaru answered cryptically. Hearing those words, Neji had began to try and work out who could possibly bump into Kiba that would concern their group. The two geniuses shared a look that said that they had worked it out while Choji and Lee were left hanging, waiting for Kiba to reveal the mystery person. Kiba looked around the table, glad that he had all their attention and glad that half of them had not worked out who he was talking about. It was always good to bring good and surprising news to the group. But before he could even open his mouth to continue his story, he was interrupted by a loud greeting. "Oi, you guys miss me or what?" All at once the guys looked at the newcomer. "Naruto," they cried out in unison. "I told you it will be troublesome," Shikamaru said to Choji. Choji was shocked and so were the others at the table. Kiba merely grinned. Even though Neji had figured out that it was probably Naruto that Kiba had bumped into, he had no idea he would be showing up tonight. Shino remained quiet as he always does while Lee's eyes were brimming with fire from joy. "Still loud as ever it seems," Shino replied back, which made the guys laugh. "It's great to see you too, bug freak." Naruto replied back as he gave the bug user a curt nod. Soon Naruto joined them at the table and began to catch up on old times. More about what had happened to Sasuke. Naruto found out Sasuke had left the village and had joined Sound to become more powerful. They told Naruto of the failed mission, the Sand siblings' arrival and how Shino almost died in the encounter if not for Kakashi arriving in time. The battle proved to be a bit too much for both Sasuke and Kakashi since it left them with barely enough chakra. The fight was a draw. Kakashi had barely any chakra left when Kabuto arrived and assisted Sasuke's escape. Naruto listened intently at the story. He couldn't help but feel that he should have been there. He could have managed to persuade Sasuke to return or at least talk some sense into him. He looked at the solemn faces of his comrades. He could tell that Sasuke's treachery affected them. He couldn't understand how Sasuke could abandon the village that practically worshipped the ground that he walked on while he was treated with so much disdain. The mood had considerably darkened, so the guys opted to change the topic by asking Naruto about his travels and training. Which Naruto was too happy to oblige. Lee, Choji and Kiba listened in rapt attention while Shikamaru, Shino and Neji deduced that 40% of his story had been exaggerated and had been altered to fuel Naruto's ego. Though it was hard to decipher which part since they all knew that Naruto had continued to grow stronger. The Chunin exams proved that, from being dead last to reaching the preliminaries, they were quite sure that if Naruto showed enough maturity and self-discipline during the exams, he could have reached Chunin the same time as Shikamaru. That's a load of bull and you know it. Kiba accused Naruto. There's no way you could pull something like that. Kiba, don't underestimate the power of Naruto's youth. Lee defended. Awed by Naruto's story, he had found himself another rival other than his teammate Neji. You just wished you were in my position, dog breath. Naruto replied back, while Choji continued to munch on the food while listening to his comrades' conversation. So what's been happening with you guys lately? Naruto asked. Kiba grinned as he waited for Naruto to drink a mouthful of his drink before telling him the news that shocked the rest of them when they first found out. Seeing Kiba's mischievous grin, the rest of the guys observed Naruto, waiting to see how he will react while Shino leaned back from his seat. He didn't find it shocking at all. Shino got engaged. Kiba blurted out, which made Naruto's eyes pop out from surprise. The drink he was consuming ended up in the wrong pipe, so he spilled his drink. He threw up his drink, some of it coming out of his nose. What? Naruto sputtered in response, almost choking on his drink. He angrily glared at Kiba, vowing that he will get him later for this. The guys just laughed at Naruto, while the rest of the diners were grossed out by Naruto's reaction. Since when? Asked Naruto. Since last fall, Shino answered. He still couldn't figure out why this is such a big surprise to anyone. After all, he was male, formerly single, dark, mysterious and good-looking according to some Genin's girls and his own mother. To a girl, Naruto continued to ask. Still couldn't believe that someone like Shino, who liked bugs and was too stern, serious and way too quiet, could hook up with a girl. Any girl for that matter. Why does this news surprise you so much, Naruto? Of course I am engaged to a female. Who else am I supposed to be engaged to? Surely not Kiba. Shino replied back. Everyone was surprised by the annoyance in Shino's voice. Shino was normally bland and straight to the point kind of guy. To hear him irritated and actually make fun of his teammate was something new to all of them. Naruto, on the other hand, felt sheepish by the way he was acting. Sorry, Shino. Got shocked, that's all. So who's the lucky woman? Naruto asked, curious as to what kind of woman was attracted to Shino. Her name is Kamizuru Suzumaki from Hidden Rock Village. Her clan has decided an alliance with Leaf is to revive her clan. Their clan also specializes in utilizing bugs. Shino explained. The Kamizuru clan had almost become extinct since the last Shinobi War. In order to revive their clan, they need to forge an alliance with Leaf. More specifically with the Aburame clan to revive their diminishing numbers. There's a great risk of betrayal from them since Leaf and Rock villages still holds a grudge against each other, but the Kamizuru clan assured the Abarames that if they concede to the agreement, the remaining members of the Kamizuru clan will be migrating to Leaf as refugees. Neji explained. Suzumaki volunteered herself as a candidate for she is the granddaughter of the first Tsuchikage and seems to be the leader of the last remaining clan. Shikamaru added. Naruto nodded. Jiraiya had explained to him before about inter-village marriages and their purpose. He had never encountered such a situation to understand it very well, but somehow knowing that Shino was one of them, made his understanding about marriage treaties much better. He then wished his friend the best. Well, I hope it works out with you too. Naruto said to Shino. He remembered something about marriage treaties that Jiraiya had once told him about. Something about them being dangerous. But Naruto shrugged it off. All women are dangerous in his honest opinion. Hey Naruto, what you doing later on? Kiba asked Naruto. Neji and Shikamaru merely groaned. They knew what was coming. Kiba had always asked them to come with them, but after what had happened to Lee the last time they went, they had declined his offer. Naruto thought about what he needed to do. He really didn't feel like going back to the inn. Besides, the night was still young. It was only 10 at night. Nothing of importance. What's up? Want to come with us to the red light district for some fun? Kiba asked with a mischievous grin on his face. He loved going to the red light district and get himself plastered with booze. It's one of the places where he could actually unwind and pick up some women after a long hard day's work of missions. The rest of the guys were fun to hang out with, but most of the time they're as fun as a wet blanket. With Naruto being back, he can just imagine the fun they could have painting the town red. Yeah, sure, why not? You guys coming? Naruto asked the rest of the guys. Sorry guys, but I will have to pass. Need to go to the Hokage Tower early tomorrow to fill up some troublesome mission reports. Shikamaru declined. Have to pass too because I'm going to be taught some family techniques by my dad. Choji replied back, though he really did want to go with them. But the last time he went out with Kiba, they woke up in the holding cells for rowdy behavior. I will be training Hanabi-sama tomorrow and will be unable to attend. Lee, you cannot go with them. You are still prohibited by Hokage-sama after the last time we went out. Neji replied back. After the last time they went out, Lee accidentally consumed some sake with predictable results. Lee got drunk and trashed the place. It took all four of them to take him down since all of them were already inebriated, tipsy at the time, so they never noticed that Lee had managed to sneak in a drink for himself. Lee deflated at his comrade's reproach. It wasn't his fault he goes berserk from drinking alcohol. It was a great skill to have, but it was a lousy social mixer. Lee knows he doesn't need to have a drink to have fun, but he always felt left out when he watches his friends share a drink while he only had juice to drink too. I too need to be home early. My fiancé will be waiting for me. Shino replied back, which only made Kiba chuckle. You're not even married yet and she already has you whipped. Kiba quipped, eliciting chuckles from the guys at their table. I would have you know that I am not whipped. Shino defended only to have Kiba mocked him by making whipping noises. Making those noises and gestures isn't going to achieve anything, nor would it make me change my mind. Shino replied back. Kiba simply continued making whipping noises, eliciting chuckles from their table and a few others. Quote, comma, dot, dot, quote. Shino waited. But finally Kiba's methods had won out. Very well, I will come along only if you stop that childish display. Yosh. Kiba grinned as he put his arm over his friend. I knew you wouldn't let me down, man. Kindly remove your arm away from my person, your scent is aggravating my Kikai bugs. Shino replied back blandly. Hey, sorry man, so I guess it will be me, you and Naruto. Kiba replied back as he hastily removed his arm away from Shino's shoulders. It's meant to be Shino, Naruto and I, Kiba. Neji corrected. Kiba has the most hideous grammar he had ever encountered. Then changed his mind when he saw Naruto. Make that second. Hey, I thought you weren't coming, Neji. Naruto replied back, thoroughly confused. Which only made Kiba laugh. He was used to Neji correcting him all the time, but he never knew that Naruto interpreted his correction differently. How troublesome, Shikamaru commented while smirking himself. It was good to have Naruto back. He had never really seen the group so happy in years after Sasuke's betrayal. It was always mainly mission reports, they used to talk about not something trivial like this. It was good to see that everyone is having a good time. It's really great that you're back, Naruto. Kiba replied back while the rest of the guys agreed in his sentiment. We'll have a great time painting the town red, but in your case orange. As they continued to laugh in merriment. Another hour has passed before their little reunion came to a close as they went on their separate ways. Shino, Kiba and Naruto all headed towards Konoha's red light district for some fun, drinks and entertainment. Soon the night became a blur to Naruto as Kyuubi for once didn't use his powers to hinder the effects of alcohol in Naruto. The boy needs to have a break, besides it will be fun showing him everything he has done later. Kyuubi laughed as he saw the shenanigans the trio had gotten themselves into. Wait till Naruto finds out what they had done while he was drunk. Kyuubi laughed. The next day, Naruto woke up with a splitting headache, as a gentle voice coaxed him to awaken. Naruto. Huh. Naruto replied back. Naruto. The voice was definitely feminine. Naruto's eyes were still unfocused and his head was still fogged with sleep. He began to unsteadily stand up. You're finally awake, the voice replied back. Good. Another feminine voice replied back. By now his eyes were beginning to focus, he can now make out 5 figures within his room. He can see that their faces were scarlet. The person who stood out most was Hinata's face since she was blushing like there was no tomorrow. What the? He wanted to reply as he noticed the girls still wearing their nighties. Looking hot as hell. For a moment he thought he was still dreaming, only it wasn't a dream and he knew it. He felt his body heat up as he began to blush. He never got finish his reply because Ino took charge. Naruto, could you please take off my shirt? Ino demanded, which indicated that Naruto should comply or else. Which Naruto automatically complied to. Feeling rather embarrassed as he watched Ino help him when he began to struggle with the shirt. Tenten was next. Could you please take off my skirt? As she giggled. Or would you rather I do it for you? Again Naruto took off Tenten's skirt. This time declining her offer of assistance as they both blushed. Take off my bra, Naruto, and could you please do it slowly? It's very delicate, you know. Anko replied back, relishing Naruto's reaction. It was black satin lacy bra. Very expensive, watched him with keen eyes as she licked her now dry lips. His hands became sweaty as he reached the clasp at the back to release the bra. His fingers shaking as he slid the straps of the bra smoothly off the shoulders, making all the girls blush at such an erotic display. NN Naruto-kun, see, could you please take off my you-under, panties? Hinata stuttered as she blushed even brighter as she looked away. Embarrassed that she should be saying something brazen like that to him, but reassured herself that she needed to, since the other girls were confident enough to ask him to remove their clothing. With the last article of clothing removed, he finally stood there in embarrassment in front of the girls. He did his best to cover his privates with his hands. While Shizune shook her head. Do I even want to know what happened last night? Shizune sighed. By the look of things, Naruto got hammered last night. Too plastered, in fact, that they found him wearing a piece of each of the aforementioned girls' clothing. She winced when her nose caught whiff of the smell of alcohol leaking off of the blonde youth. Anko merely grinned. Is there something you need to tell us, Naruto? Something about borrowing our clothes and coming out of the closet. Not that she minded a tiniest bit. She found this rather entertaining and strangely enough intriguing. Kurenai merely shook her head as she joined the rest of the girls in Naruto's room. She had recently woke up and had wondered where the rest of the residents were when she heard their voices coming from Naruto's room, so she thought she'd check it out. She was still a bit drowsy, but upon entering the room and looking at a very inebriated Naruto woke her right up. The smell of alcohol hits her like a ton of bricks. It's not what it looks like. Naruto defended himself only to wince by the sound of his own voice creating one massive pounding headache. I think we should leave Naruto for now. Shizune replied back as she herded the girls out of his room. Realizing that Naruto now stood stark his own room while the girls ogled his body. She asked each of the girls to retrieve their now discarded clothing before ushering them away. But Anko wanted to stay and protest only to be dragged away by Kurenai. Come on Anko, you can try and molest Naruto later. Kurenai explained even though she wanted to ask why Naruto was as a jaybird and reeked of alcohol and why the hell were there pieces of the girl's clothing laying before his feet. Finally the only two people left in the room were Shizune and Naruto. Thanks Nichan. That's twice I owe ya. Naruto replied back sheepishly. It's okay Naruto, just go take a shower and have some rest. I will take your breakfast to you as well as some meds to counter that hangover of yours. Shizune smiled as he pushed the blonde towards the bathroom. Then later you can tell me all about your cross-dressing fetishes. Shizune replied back as she gave him one final push to the bathroom and slammed the door shut before Naruto could reply back. Naruto could hear Shizune's melodious giggle all the way from the other side of the room. Great. This is just great. Stupid Kiba. Naruto cursed. He swore he would never drink to an excess ever again, that and to tell Kyuubi never ever let him get drunk ever again. All the while wincing as he could hear Kyuubi's resonating roar of laughter in his head as Kyuubi rolled on the ground laughing. Somewhere in Konoha's holding cells, Kiba woke up with a splitting headache, his mouth tasted like vomit and he couldn't remember a single thing. Good. You are now awake. Shino's voice filtered into his head. What happened last night? It's got to be some night-eye Shino. Kiba replied back as he grinned at his comrade. It was, so could you please disentangle yourself from my person? Shino replied back blandly. That woke up Kiba faster than cold water, for indeed he was sharing the bunk bed with Shino. And for the look of things, he had used his comrade as a substitute pillow. He jumped away from him, looking embarrassed as hell. Hey, sorry about that man. Kiba replied back. It is all right Kiba. These things are bound to happen sometime. Shino replied back. Quote. Kiba looked at his comrade weirdly as he took a couple of steps back. Hey, up and at them guys. You've been bailed. The shinobi guards informed them as he opened the jail cell. I really think I should start reserving one of the cell blocks just for you guys. I'm surprised you still haven't learned your lesson yet. The shinobi guard lectured Kiba as he led them towards the administration office. Shino and Kiba remained silent. Simply because their hangover was keeping them to reply back. At the office they were greeted by Inuzuka Hana and Shino's fiancé. Rough night pup. Hana replied back as she grinned at her younger brother's face. Kiba winced in reply. He will have another earful later from their mother once they get home. Suzumaki merely glared at her fiancé before she turned around and walked out. Shino, like a whipped puppy, soon followed her without a word. I like her. She sure knows how to control her man. Hana commented. While the shinobi guard made a whipping noise at the background, the other guards sniggered in response as well as a few others. Thanks Nichan. That's twice I owe ya. Naruto replied back sheepishly. It's okay Naruto, just go take a shower and have some rest. I will take your breakfast to you as well as some meds to counter that hangover of yours. Shizune smiled as he pushed the blonde towards the bathroom. Then later you can tell me all about your cross-dressing fetishes. Shizune replied back as she gave him one final push to the bathroom and slammed the door shut before Naruto could reply back. Naruto could hear Shizune's melodious giggle all the way from the other side of the room. Great. This is just great. Stupid Kiba. Naruto cursed. He swore he would never drink to an excess ever again, that and to tell Kyuubi never ever let him get drunk ever again. All the while wincing as he could hear Kyuubi's resonating roar of laughter in his head as Kyuubi rolled on the ground laughing. Somewhere in Konoha's holding cells, Kiba woke up with a splitting headache, his mouth tasted like vomit and he couldn't remember a single thing. Good. You are now awake. Shino's voice filtered into his head. What happened last night? It's got to be some night-eye Shino. Kiba replied back as he grinned at his comrade. It was, so could you please disentangle yourself from my person? Shino replied back blandly. That woke up Kiba faster than cold water, for indeed he was sharing the bunk bed with Shino. And for the look of things, he had used his comrade as a substitute pillow. He jumped away from him, looking embarrassed as hell. Hey, sorry about that, man. Kiba replied back. It is all right, Kiba. These things are bound to happen sometime. Shino replied back. Quote, comma, dot, quote. Kiba looked at his comrade weirdly as he took a couple of steps back. Hey, up and at them, guys. You've been bailed. The shinobi guards informed them as he opened the jail cell. I really think I should start reserving one of the cell blocks just for you guys. I'm surprised you still haven't learned your lesson yet. The shinobi guard lectured Kiba as he led them towards the administration office. Shino and Kiba remained silent, simply because their hangover was keeping them to reply back. At the office they were greeted by Inuzuka Hana and Shino's fiancé. Rough night, pup. Hana replied back as she grinned at her younger brother's face. Kiba winced in reply. He will have another earful later from their mother once they get home. Suzumaki merely glared at her fiancé before she turned around and walked out. Shino, like a whipped puppy, soon followed her without a word. I like her. She sure knows how to control her man. Hana commented. While the shinobi guard made a whipping noise at the background, the other guards sniggered in response as well as a few others. Naruto groaned in frustration as his memories began to seep in. He had just finished showering and was now fully dressed. A full set of glowering and moping adorned his usual cheerful demeanor. He tried to ignore Kyuubi's resonating laughter but couldn't. What's worst was the fact that it was making his head hurt. He knew Kyuubi was deliberately not doing anything for his headache so that he had no choice but listen to its roar of laughter. You humans really are an amusing bunch of species. Kyuubi commented as it continued to roar. With the help of Kyuubi, who kept laughing in his subconscious, he watched painfully as he bear witnessed last night's events as it flash in his mind. Flashback. So Naruto, how does it feel coming back to Konoha? Kiba asked as they walked through the red light district. The district was known for adult fun. Casinos, bathhouses, dance clubs and massage parlors were the main business. Neon lights flashing and bright slogans were everywhere, inviting potential customers to come to their establishments. Kiba smirked and winked at some of the women they walked past. A couple of them even giggled to themselves as they smiled shyly at the trio. Kiba was still wearing his Chunin jacket, which attracted some of the women civilians' attention. Though they were eyeing Shino and Naruto the same manner they gave Kiba. It's not bad. Actually, it feels like I'm in training again, except without Ero Sennin. Naruto sighed. During his training, whenever they were in town, his mentor had dragged him toward the red district of each village they stayed at, saying it was all for research and part of training him to become a man. It always meant that Gama-chan would lose weight because of Jiraiya's demands. Stealing Gama-chan from him when he didn't give him money for his research. Shino merely lifted an eyebrow at Naruto's reply, but didn't comment on it. His bugs were sensing a lot of pheromones in the air, more directed at them. He reasoned it was because of Naruto's presence. Blonde hair, blue eyes and orange pants would capture anyone's attention. Besides, it was rare to find a blonde male in Konoha district. He guessed most of the women hasn't realized it was Naruto. If they did, they would probably look their way in disdain. Something that always bothered the bug user. What was it about Naruto that incited such animosity from the people of Konoha? Was it caused by Naruto's pranks long ago or something more? Here we are, Kiba proclaimed as they stopped by in front of bar with the name, Mocha, written in bold large letters. Shino on the other hand merely shook his head. They were at the very same bar where they got kicked out for almost destroying the place. Well, what's left of it anyways? Kiba. It says close due to reconstruction. Naruto pointed out to him. Hey, oh that's right. As Kiba laughed. Must have forgotten. So what now? Naruto asked. Hey, I know, let's try that new club. Kiba remarked. Surely you don't mean, Shino replied back before he was cut off by Kiba. Oh come on Shino. We didn't go the last time because you guys said you just wanted to drink. I bet Naruto would like to have some fun after all that long training trip he went to. Kiba explained, but Shino didn't seem too convinced. Come on Shino. Do it for Naruto. Kiba pleaded. Though it was more for his benefit really. Very well. But this night better not end up like last time. Shino sighed as he gave in. Or the other nights for that matter. It won't. Besides, Lee isn't with us and neither are the other guys. Kiba answered. I know, and that's what I'm afraid of. Shino replied back. The whole incident wasn't really Lee's fault, it was Kiba's, before an all-out brawl commenced. Lee just added a bit more to the fire, that's all. Hey, it wasn't my fault. How was I to know he was a woman? She was flat as an ironing board. Kiba remarked. Naruto merely stood there, not actually understanding the situation. He didn't really know what happened the last time the guys went out, but it sounded like it didn't end very well. Come on, it's almost midnight. We may have missed happy hour, but we're not going to miss the show. Kiba replied back before dragging his companions towards the club. Kunai Club. Kiba. Naruto twitched as they were seated inside the club, while Kiba ordered a round of drinks. Yeah, Naruto. Naruto twitched again. Why are we at a strip club? Naruto replied back as he tried to control his voice from squeaking. He had thought all the pervertedness was over now that Jiraiya has left for a mission. Kiba merely laughed. Come on Naruto. Don't act as though you've never seen women before. Shino remained silent as loud music blared through the entire club. Numerous people were dancing on the dance floor. Their table was near the stage. There were a couple of women on stage wearing skimpy clothing as they danced provocatively with the music. There are even women in cages in various corners of the club, with women wearing skimpy clothing dancing inside. Besides, this is not a strip club. This is a dance club. Kiba had to raise his voice so Naruto would be able to hear him over the music. Are you sure? Naruto asked, looking at the women on stage in the cages. It looked like some of the strip clubs Jiraiya frequented. For the record though, he never really went to the strip club and stayed there. He knew what it looked like because he had to somehow drag his mentor's drunk carcass back to the hotel they were staying in whenever Jiraiya gets too drunk to drag his to bed. Jiraiya normally sends one of the summoning frogs to Naruto to inform him of his state. Though sometimes Naruto thinks Jiraiya was doing it on purpose, since every time he arrived at the club to get his back to the hotel, he refuses to leave, making him wait and sit there while the women tried to seduce him. Of course, I'm sure. They're not taking their clothes off, are they? Kiba replied back, irritated. For someone who claimed to have seen it all from his journey, Naruto was acting too much like a wet blanket. Kiba had thought Naruto would appreciate his company and would appreciate the atmosphere. He thought, being the wild guy he was, he would appreciate the place just like he does. It seems their animalistic similarities doesn't extend that far. No, they're not. Naruto replied back with a tired sigh. Kiba was right. None of the girls were undressing. They were just dancing too provocatively to his liking. Being around with Jiraiya had taught him a lot. One in which he should always respect women, or else. In his mentor's case, it always ended up the or else part where he was always chased and beaten to a bloody pulp. It was always left to him to take care of his sorry after the whole mess is fixed. They wouldn't need to anyway. Shino commented, as he watched the people on the dance floor dance. Soon their drinks arrived and a few minutes later the alcohol began to take effect. This music is crap, Shino commented as he put his glass down rather roughly on the table. The music began to drag after a while. Many of the people had stopped dancing and had began seating at their table and drink instead. And you can do better. Kiba mocked while Naruto laughed. Kyuubi on the other hand watched Naruto unwind. It was rare for the blonde to relax. The blonde was always training, and had no time for anything else other than gobbling huge amounts of ramen. Kyuubi began to feel Naruto's body relax. Kyuubi found it amusing what alcohol could do to a human boy in the human system. It decided that for tonight, it will not intervene with the alcohol running through Naruto's system. It was always curious as to how the blonde would behave once the alcohol has been introduced to Boy's system. It had seen Jiraiya drunk through Naruto's eyes and found it hilarious. It had seen a lot of drunken behavior through Naruto's eyes and had never actually seen Naruto lose it before, so with that thought, Kyuubi merely stayed at the background and watched the scene unfold. Shino merely scoffed and stood up. Naruto had thought that Shino had lost it and was going home. Then, to his surprise, he saw Shino head towards the DJ booth. He saw Shino talk to the DJ. For a while they seemed like they were arguing. He was going to come there and intervene when he saw the DJ give up and made way for Shino. Shino took his headphones and the music stopped. The people became upset. Shino merely grinned, he cracked his fingers and began to spin the disc. Naruto was flabbergasted as dance music started pumping through the speakers, as Shino began to create his own mix of fast-paced dance music to provocative ones, alternating all the time while the crowd went wild and demanded he played more. Soon women began to flank their table. 2 women began to drag Kiba and Naruto towards the dance floor. They began to grind themselves against Naruto and Kiba. Kiba was now dancing in sync with the brunette woman. He gave Naruto a wink, as he matched the brunette's move. Naruto decided to let go and began to relax. He danced with the short-haired woman. Because of the many times Jiraiya had dragged him to places with eclectic tastes, he eventually learned the art of dancing. He was pretty good too, because soon not only was he dancing with the short-haired woman but a redhead as well. Not a few minutes later 2 more women came and danced with women grinded themselves against him while he moved to the rhythm and beat of Shino's music. Naruto began to get nervous because soon the number of women surrounding him grew. So he excused himself, telling the ladies that he was going to get a drink and will come back for them later. He tried to look for Kiba but he couldn't find him through the sea of dancers. So he decided to go to the bar and have a drink of water. It seemed he had a little too much to drink since the alcohol in his system began to do its work and was now muddling his thoughts. Kyuubi grinned at his subconscious as it watched and felt what was happening to the boy's body. The club was getting rather full, the music was loud and in full swing thanks to Shino. The room temperature seemed to have increased. He was parched and all sweaty from all the dancing he did. He ordered a bottle of water but the bar person was too busy with a flock of people trying to get their orders in. He waited patiently for his turn. Something caught his attention. One of the women in the cages came out only to be replaced by another woman. Her shift had finally finished. It was now her turn to serve at the bar. She frowned when she noticed a swarm of people barking their orders and wasn't really relishing the fact that they would soon be barking those orders at her. But she earned more money this way and the tip were sometimes generous. She was on her way to the bar when a hand shot out and gripped her wrist tightly. "Where do you think you're going, beautiful?" the hulking mass of a man asked her. He reeked of alcohol. He looked like he was dropped on his face a couple of times when he was a child because he sure wasn't nice to look at. She smiled sweetly. She was used to these kinds of confrontations. "Sorry, but I still have work to do." She smiled as she tried to pry her wrist away from his tight grip. "Come on. One dance." He smiled as he tightened his grip. This guy wasn't asking from the look of things. "I really need to go, so if you could please just let go of my hand." She began to struggle vainly from his grip. She was still trying to reason with the drunkard. She didn't want to create a scene. "Why, you little. Do you think you could tease me like that? I've been watching you the whole night and I'll be damned if I'll just let you walk away." He replied back. His smile was now replaced by an angry sneer. She looked around for anyone to assist her. She really didn't want to lose her job over this. But it seemed that the people around her were too engrossed to the music that they didn't care what was happening between her and this drunken oaf. She could feel the pain in her wrist as he tightened his hold on her, making her cry out in pain. She was about to retaliate when a voice interrupted them. "Let her go. The lady doesn't want to dance with you." Naruto heard her gasp and quickly assessed the situation. His eyes narrowed. A big hulking guy was towering over one of the dancers. She looked like she was trying to get away from him but couldn't because of his firm grip on her wrist. She was looking around as though wanting to call for help. Let her go. The lady doesn't want to dance with you, he told the big ugly giant. The guy merely scoffed. And who's going to make me? You. Don't make me laugh, runt. Do me a favor and piss off and leave me and her alone. I said leave her alone. Naruto repeated, this time growling. The guy merely smirked. Well, you asked for it. Before roughly letting go of the woman and throwing a punch towards him. Naruto stood there and caught his fist. What the? The guy replied back in shock as he tried to push his fist to connect. He then tried to use his other fist but only to be surprised even more when the blonde caught it just like the first. Naruto merely smiled before tightening his grip on the guy's fists. He could feel the bone in his hand shake and feel that if he used a little more force he would be able to crush his hand altogether. You were saying, he mocked the guy before pushing the guy's fists abruptly upwards. The guy fell on his knees from pain. Gee Gomen. The guy replied back. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to the lady. Naruto growled. MS sorry. The guy bit back, pleading at the woman he was harassing. Fighting the tears that were brimming in his eyes because of the pain that radiated in his body. The woman in question, on the other hand, watched the entire scene with amazed eyes. The guy was 3 times the size of the blonde, and for him to be able to stop that punch was incredible. The blonde didn't even flinch when he caught both the guy's fists. He didn't even move and stood there like an immovable statue. The woman wanted nothing more but to let the blonde trash the guy, but they were causing a scene. She didn't want to get fired, so with much apprehension she told the blonde to let the big oaf go. Please let him go. The woman sighed. Naruto gave her an unreadable look but did as he was told. He let go of the guy, who hastily retreated, making the crowd laugh. You'll pay for this. The big guy replied back. His pride hurt at being beaten by a blonde runt who isn't even half his size. As he ran out of the club, the crowd cheered for Naruto. Are you alright, miss? Naruto asked the woman. Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks. She replied back, slightly blushing. Did he hurt you? Naruto asked. What? She replied back. The music resumed its normal volume. She had a hard time hearing his voice. I said, did he hurt you? Naruto repeated, this time leaning close to her ear, invading her personal space. And no. She gasped out, blushing some more. Well, Naruto was about to ask if she was sure when a woman latched into his arm. There you are, honey. I thought we've lost you, said the redhead who he was dancing with earlier. She eyed the woman before her, giving her a once-over before returning her attention back to Naruto. You still owe me a dance, cutie. She replied back before pressing herself against his side, making sure that the other woman saw it. But I haven't gotten my drink yet. Naruto replied back. The woman he rescued felt a little put out by the redhead's display. So he's already taken. She slightly bristled at the discovery. Thanks again. She replied back before leaving her hero abruptly. She had a job to do. Naruto was slightly disappointed that the woman he rescued had just left them without another word, while the redhead clung against him. With a lot of pleading to the other woman, he had managed to pry himself away from her grip, promising to get her a drink as well. With a heavy sigh, Naruto went back to the bar. What can I get you? Said the feminine voice. Can I please get a bottle of water and a strawberry daiquiri, please? He ordered before lifting his gaze to the bartender, only to be caught in surprise to see who was serving him. Coming right up, she huffed as she took his order. She was still slightly annoyed that the guy was taken. She knew the other drink was most probably for his red-headed girlfriend. Naruto was confused. The woman he had just rescued was acting bitchy to him and he had no idea why. Perhaps she realized who he was. Once she bought over the drinks, he would ask her. Here you go, she informed him. Naruto reached for his pocket to pay only to be stopped by her. No need. It's in the house. A thanks for earlier. she replied back. Naruto smiled at her, but paid for the drinks anyway. She didn't dislike him after all. I said, she replied back but was interrupted by him. I know what you said but I didn't do that to get any reward. Besides I think you'd get in trouble for giving drinks away. Naruto replied back with one of his foxy grin. The name's Uzumaki Naruto and you are. Before she could reply however, Kiba was by his side as well as Shino. Dude, we have to blow this joint now. What the hell? Kiba, what's wrong? Naruto replied back to his panicked comrade. No time to explain. They're coming. Shino replied back calmly while looking over his shoulder. Both guys gripped Naruto's shoulder as they hightailed out of the bar. Where are they? Cried a very pissed off Junin followed by few of his cronies. Stopping by the bar. I believe they just left, answered one of the people in the crowd. After them, the Junin cried as he and his fellow Junins chased after the trio. All the while a brunette woman was struggling to follow them. Young, wait. Damn it. We're over. The brunette who was dancing with Kiba earlier called out. The woman behind the bar watched the scene and couldn't help but giggle. Until a familiar red head appeared in front of her. Where is he? She asked irritated. She wasn't able to give him her number unlike the other women he was dancing earlier. He just left. I think this is your drink. She replied back as she handed the strawberry daiquiri. The redhead sighed as she sat on the stool. Damn, I was this close too. I didn't even get to exchange numbers with him. The redhead sighed. You mean you're not together? The woman behind the bar inquired. I wish. She scoffed but continued. I thought I got lucky when I found him in the crowd again. You wouldn't believe how many women he was dancing with before. She sighed dejectedly. Meanwhile the barmaid frowned. His name was oddly familiar. His two friends looked familiar too. It seemed she would need to change jobs after all or risk getting caught. Kin, get a move on will you? We're getting smashed here, called out the other bartender, snapping Kin out of her reverie. Hi. Meanwhile back to our trio. The hell Kiba. Naruto cursed as he found himself dodging kunais. Just keep running Naruto and shut the hell up. Kiba hissed. Out of all the nins you could piss off, you had to piss off a Junin. Shino surprisingly cursed his comrade. But not just one Junin. Oh no. Not you Kiba. You had to pick a Junin with a pack of other Junins with him. Shino sarcastically pointed out as they ran. While he was sure they could have easily handled the situation, he wasn't about to risk it. All three of them had a lot to drink tonight and most of his bugs were too intoxicated to be used to fight. The trio managed to lose their pursuers by hiding in a dark alleyway. Wasn't my fault. How was I to know she has a boyfriend? Kiba hissed in a low whisper trying to catch his breath. Only you could attract such problems. Shino replied back. It's just a matter of time before we get caught. Naruto in the meanwhile kept cursing. He was still a little bit drunk and was having trouble sorting out his thoughts. There they are. Kuso. Our trio cried out in unison. Before running again, they saw another club. In there. Kiba cried out. We'll be able to loose them in the crowd. The trio then headed in the club along with their would-be pursuers, unaware that the club was called the Blue Oyster, with flashing neon lights. A couple of minutes later horrifying screams were heard. Naruto on the other hand stumbled out of the back door. He had lost his comrades in the club alright. It was a good thing he had managed to perform his jutsu. Thanks Fox. He mumbled out. Don't mention it Kit. Kyuubi sniggered in response. I think it's time to call it a night. Naruto replied back as he began to make his way home. The jutsu still in effect. What about you comrades Kit? Kyuubi inquired. They'll be fine. Naruto managed to say. Too tired to really do anything. Besides they had it coming. Kyuubi kept sniggering. What? Naruto asked in irritation. Nothing Kit. Nothing. Kyuubi replied back. Naruto must be rubbing off it. Naruto's knack in pranks was rubbing off on the mischievous fox. Naruto in the other hand was starting to feel guilty for leaving his friends behind when he saw them dash past him. Unaware of his jutsu. Well at least they're okay. Naruto said to himself as he continued his way towards the Kunoichi inn. By the way, Fox, where did you get the idea for the clothes? Naruto asked. Nowhere important. Kyuubi replied. Kyuubi had summoned a subspace when Naruto performed his jutsu, actually collecting clothes from the inn and then back at Naruto. At the moment Naruto was in henge form. He's in his favorite female form, except the girl looked around his age and was wearing a tight white t-shirt, schoolgirl skirt, knee-high socks and sporting a pair of white tennis shoes. By the time he reached the inn, he kicked off the shoes and socks until he remembered to just cancel the henge. Canceling the henge had used up his strength and sent him sprawling in his bed unaware that his clothes are real. Which only made Kyuubi cackle, anticipating his reaction the morning after. End flashback. Nice going, you bastard Fox. Now everyone would think I'm a cross-dresser. Naruto cursed. Serves you right. Kyuubi replied back as it kept howling with laughter. Yeah, very funny. Now how the hell do I explain this? Naruto replied back. Just tell the vixens the truth, Kit. If worst come to worst, just bribe them to keep it quiet. Kyuubi advised, which only made Naruto groan. Just then Shizune knocked outside his door. Naruto, may I come in? I brought you your breakfast and some pills for your hangover. Shizune called out. Come in, Nei-chan. Naruto replied back. Shizune came to the room and doted on Naruto, watching Naruto eat and take the pills she had brought in. Well? Shizune asked once Naruto was finished. Thanks, Nei-chan. Naruto replied back sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his head. No, not about that, silly. What I meant was, are you ready to explain what happened last night? Shizune giggled. Naruto sighed. He might as well tell her. And so he did. He began to narrate to her what had happened at Kunai Club and what had happened afterwards. When I did the jutsu, I didn't know the henge clothes I was wearing was real. So yeah, I dispelled it last night, but I passed out after that. I guess the clothes stayed on, making me look like a drag queen. Naruto replied back, watching Shizune clutch her sides from mirth. Sorry Naruto-kun, I just couldn't help it. It was funny. And you look adorable when we caught you. Shizune replied back in between giggles, causing Naruto to pout. Shizune only ruffled his blonde hair in response, amazed that Naruto's hair felt like silk against her fingers. Tell you what, Naruto, I'll talk to the girls and I'll explain to them what happened. Shizune replied back as she smiled fondly at the blonde. Really? Naruto replied back. Shizune merely nodded in response before being engulfed into a bear hug by Naruto. Thanks, Nei-chan. Naruto replied back as he tackled Shizune in a tight embrace. It had been almost a week since the little incident happened. Naruto had managed to not anger any of the residents of the inn, though every time he walked past them, they would giggle and he knew it was for his expense, except maybe for Hinata, who would blush like a tomato. Thankfully enough, they never spoke about it out loud, nor did he hear any gossip about him outside the inn that would incriminate him in his so-called dress-up incident. Just the usual insults about being a demon and that he should die sort of stuff. No big deal really, since he was already used to it. He was currently doing some roof repairs, replacing some of the tiles that are too old or broke. He had not yet spoken to Sakura. He had thought about asking her out since he had returned, but it seemed she was still too preoccupied with the hospital as well as training with Tsunade. He hadn't had an opportunity to get her alone and formally ask her out yet, and was still waiting for the right timing. The one thing he learned from his perverted mentor was that timing was everything. His chances would be greater if he manages to get her alone when she's in high spirits, and would be less inclined to reject him like the other few times she did when they were still in the same team with Sasuke. Thinking of his former teammate made him frown. He had always thought of the arrogant bastard as a friend, albeit they did clash a lot, but he knew that both he and Sasuke shared the same pain of living alone, loneliness and emptiness. He was sure he also felt the same raw emotion when he eventually had to go home after training, surrounded by darkness with no one to greet or share anybody's company. No one to talk to or share how his day has been. No one to dote you any kind of affection. Just by yourself in an empty cold house. Oi Naruto. Take a break will you? He heard Tenten call out from the third floor balcony. Almost finished tension. Naruto called out in reply. Get down here right now or I'll drag your here. Tenten warned. She had called him to have a break 30 minutes ago and has yet to do so. Naruto merely sighed. He wiped the sweat from his brow before jumping down to where Tenten was. Tenten was a little surprised by his sudden appearance but masked it well. She had been meaning to ask him if they could spar some time since she had watched him do some morning exercises at the backyard and was amazed at some of the katas he performed. The inn was virtually deserted as the other girls went off to do whatever it was that they were meant to do, which was mostly training with their teammates, missions or work. She had prepared a snack for Naruto, seeing as he was working really hard to maintain and repair the inn. Something that the other residents really appreciated. During the short time he has lived in the inn, the residents had grown quite fond of him due to his thoughtful gestures and repairs he did around the inn. I prepared a snack for you. Tenten informed him as she led them towards the kitchen. There was a cool jug of orange juice and a couple of sandwiches on the table. Thanks Tenshin. Naruto replied as he poured himself a glass of orange juice. Care to join me? I don't like to eat alone. Tenten fought the urge to blush at Naruto's pet name. Since his stay, he had attached Chan to each of their names, all except for Anko. This is most probably due to the many times Anko had teased him at any given opportunity that presented itself, making the blonde nervous around her. She watched him as he poured another glass of juice and handed it to her. Thanks, Tenten said as she took the juice and watched him wolf down a couple of sandwiches. No problem, Naruto replied back in between bites. Great sandwiches by the way. Tenten slightly colored at the praise. She was still getting used to their living arrangements. She was used to hanging out with the guys since she was the only girl in their cell team. Actually, each three-man team only had one girl because of the scarcity of female kunoichis. Most of the kunoichis just become medic nins and work at the hospital. Not many actually become tokubetsu junins. Only a select few had attained such a position. But what makes Naruto's presence different was the way he treated them. Her teammates had always treated her as one of the guys. She never got much praise from Neji and her mentor, and Lee gave over-the-top speech praises that always resulted to them crying and hugging each other. Something she really didn't like witnessing. She sometimes felt that she had lost her femininity. She didn't act like the other kunoichis in the inn. Their teammates always treated them like they're, well, females. Sakura and Ino because of their domineering and demanding personalities, Hinata's gentle and shy personality which makes her other teammates act like protective brothers, and then there was Tamari whose status as the Kazecage's sister and overprotective brothers made her the typical princess with bad attitude. She on the other hand had none of these traits. No one treated her with any special care. No one treated her like a delicate flower. She was just Tenten, the weapon mistress. But Naruto was different. He treated all the girls the same with his carefree attitude. He wasn't a gentleman. His brash attitude and mannerisms are at times atrocious, especially when he eats his favorite food, ramen. But he could really be sweet and thoughtful at times and a great person to talk to. On closer inspection, Naruto wasn't all that bad. He had grown more handsome over the years and his body was something to drool for. He also had the most brilliant eyes Tenten has ever seen. His blue orbs were just so mesmerizing. They were like sapphires when the light touches them. Is there something on my face? Naruto asked Tenten. She had been staring at him for a while now. No, nothing, she replied back. She didn't realize she had been staring at Naruto for quite some time now. Oh, okay then if you're sure. Naruto replied back with a raised eyebrow. Hey listen Tenshin, I need to go out for a while and buy some more tiles for the roof. You want anything while I'm out? Tenten smiled at his thoughtfulness and shook her head. No, what you bought 2 weeks ago is more than enough. We can survive a whole 2 months with the amount of groceries you bought. Hey, sorry about that. Naruto apologized while he absent-mindedly rubbed the back of his head. What are you apologizing for? It was great. We don't have to worry about groceries for a while. Tenten replied back. She then remembered the other stuff he bought each of the girls along with the groceries. They had received a few beauty products courtesy of Kurenai's advice and also had a new set of kunai weapons. She had found out from Kurenai that Naruto had asked her opinion on what the girls liked and promptly purchased them. Something to make amends for after having such a disastrous first encounter. All the girls had given him their heartful thanks, which made him blush like a tomato. Really? You don't think it was over the top? Naruto asked once again. He didn't want to seem as though he was buying their affection so that he can stay at the inn. Tenten merely shook her head. His clueless expression was just too cute, causing his eyes to grow bigger and his blue orbs glitter with hope and joy. Thanks, Tenshin. Naruto replied before getting up his seat. I'll see you later then. Yane. He bid his farewell and walked out, leaving Tenten in her seat as she watched him go. Meanwhile, not so far away from the inn. Get out of my way, shouted the boy. He was around 14 years of age and was arguing with another boy. You get out of my way. The other boy, who originally came from the county of Wave, retorted. You guys, said another boy their age with glasses. Don't you know who you're speaking to? The boy was shouted. You're speaking to the next Hokage. Hokage my butt. Naruto Nichin will become Hokage, retorted the other boy angrily. How dare you speak to leader and my greatest rival that way? The other boy fumed. How dare this guy talked about his Nichin as though they were close? You guys, I really don't think, pleaded the boy with the spectacles. Only to be rudely cut off. Stay out of this udon. Konohamaru replied back to his best friend. Ever since the other boy had been transferred to their class, they have been at each other's throats. He and his mother had moved to Konoha so he could become a ninja. Though everyone wondered why he transferred all the way to Konoha when he can easily become one if he enrolled at Kurigakure, Mist, or at Omegakure, Rain. What made Konohamaru angrier was the way he always referred to his Nichin with the same familiarity he has. Naruto was his Nichin. He had known Naruto longer and had even taught him his infamous, sexy jutsu. He was his protege and rival. Not this transfer from the country of Wave. Inari always thinks he's the best. The two of them had been trying to best each other at every possible way. Hey Gaki, kep it down will you? Kiba reprimanded the trio. He had been very irritable as of late. He had been given D-rank missions because of the incidents he caused a week ago until further notice. The two boys he recognized always had the tendency of getting way too loud when they meet or cross each other's paths. What are you Gakis arguing about now? He asked. Before the two fighting boys could answer, two more people joined them. Ohio Konohamaru-kun, Udon-kun, Inari-kun and Inazuka-senpai. The orange-haired girl greeted. Ohio Moegi-chan, Hanabi-san, Kiba greeted Moegi and her companion. Unlike the two boys within front of him, the two girls had become fast friends. Something even he can't fathom. Hyuga Hanabi was not like her sister Hinata. While Hinata was shy, Hanabi was outspoken and very opinionated and tends to speak condescendingly to the people around her. It was because she was the Hyuga heir. She tended to act more like Neji before Naruto kicked his. Hanabi merely gave Kiba a curt nod before turning her attention towards her best friend's friends. She never seemed to get along with anyone other than Moegi. Moegi was just too cheerful and often dragged her to hang out with the Konohamaru Corps. Moegi even asked her to join their team, but she refused simply because she didn't like Moegi's friends. Most especially Konohamaru. What are you two knuckleheads arguing about now? Hanabi asked the boys. Shut up, you hag. Konohamaru replied back. Don't talk like that to a girl. Inari retorted back. His mother had always taught him to respect everyone. Besides, he was bad-mouthing his crush's best friend. Issuing another argument from the two, Kiba massaged his temple trying to fight off the headache the two boys caused from shouting at each other. Akamaru had already headed back home, so it was up to him to stop the boys from arguing before it resulted into a fight. If Naruto Nichin was here, he'll teach you a lesson. Inari shouted at Konohamaru. Kiba twitched. His headache was getting worse. Well, if the brats idolized Naruto so much, then a prank was in order. After all, that was what Naruto was known for. So you guys think you can best each other, do you? Kiba asked. Of course I can. Both boys cried in unison. How about a test? Kiba grinned evilly, which made the two boys step back a little. You boys think you can handle it? The two boys looked doubtful for a moment, which prompted Kiba to push them a little harder. Too bad. I'm sure Naruto would be so disappointed. I know for sure Naruto never backs down from a challenge. Which was true, since Naruto always goes head first to any challenge without thinking sometimes. Kiba was sure that the many times Naruto survived was more because of dumb luck than anything else, though he's certain there's something more to the blonde than he lets everyone know. Upon hearing their idol's name, both boys nodded in unison. Great. You boys follow me then. It's nice to see you ladies. Kiba replied back as he dragged the two boys in a very reluctant udon away. I wonder what Inuzuka-senpai had in mind. Moegi asked out loud as watched her friends get dragged by Kiba. Who cares? Hanabi sighed. Glad that they finally left. Truthfully, she was getting sick and tired of hearing them argue. It was all about Hokage this or Hokage that, or Naruto Nichin did this and he did that argument. Honestly, the blonde guy just had a lucky break. She doubts he would really be able to beat her cousin Neji again. After all, the blonde was known as dead last for a reason. Guess what, Bai-chan? Moegi suddenly brightened as she turned to her best friend. Hanabi fought the urge to hit Moegi on the back of her head. She doesn't approve of her affectionate nickname in public. It takes away the pride of her Hyuga name, but she let it slide. What is it, Moegi-chan? Moegi frowned. She had told Hanabi many times that she can call her Mo-chan but ignored it. It took her several months to at least gain the chan on her name. I heard Naruto Nichin was back. She squealed with glee. Moegi had never forgotten their blonde leader. He had saved her before when she kidnapped as a test by Iruka to see if Naruto was ready to participate in the Chunin exams. She had seen how much passion her leader had given, in order to save her. He was always kind to them and always played with them compared to the other people above their year. He would sometimes treat them out too. Whether it was for ice cream or ramen. She couldn't help but cheer as loudly as she can when she heard their beloved leader reach the Chunin exam preliminaries, but was sorely disappointed when she found out she couldn't go and watch the event because she had to go to school. She never did find out what happened since there had been an attack, but Hanabi had told her that her leader had defeated Hyuga Neji, Hanabi's cousin and known as the genius ninja in the academy. So, Hanabi replied back. She could care less. Aren't you excited? Moegi asked, watching her best friend's bland expression. Hanabi was about to reply when someone bumped into her. Watch where you're going, you oaf. Hanabi retorted to the person. Oh, sorry. I wasn't looking to where I was going, said the blonde-haired stranger. Are you okay? Do I look like I'm okay? Hanabi snapped at him, unaware of Moegi's star-struck stare. I'm sorry. Naruto replied back. He didn't mean to hurt the girl. He then frowned when he noticed the girl's eyes. Before he could ask if she was a Hyuga, he was interrupted by the other girl's companion. Naruto Nichin? Moegi asked hopefully, staring at him with hearts in her eyes. He had changed during the time he was away. He grew more handsome and by the look of things. Naruto squinted his eyes as he studied the other girl. The other girl appeared to be younger. Probably 14 years of age. She had long orange hair which was tied in a ponytail and was wearing a pink sleeveless shirt and black pants. She also wore her hishiate around her head. What was noticeable about her was her big bright eyes and a noticeable blush on her cheeks, making her overly cute for her age. He tried to remember where he had seen her before. Her eyes was reminding him about something. It seemed she knew him and didn't look like she was looking at him with disdain but with respect and worship. He tried racking his brain out to remember her. You don't remember her, do you? Hanabi deadpanned as she watched the blonde frown in uncertainty. She could see Moegi slightly deflate after hearing her words. After all the time Moegi talked about him, it appeared the guy she worshipped didn't even remember who she decided to take this time to study him closely. He certainly looked like the guy that beat her cousin years ago, albeit he had grown. His whisker marks were still there, his golden blonde hair shined against the sun rays. No wonder her best friend was quite taken by him. If she wanted to be honest with herself, she was too, if only just by a little bit. The guy was gorgeous. Naruto felt sheepish as he saw the orange-haired girl's expression cast down. He didn't mean to offend the girl. Moegi simply smiled at Naruto, brushing off her disappointment. It had been a long time after all. It's me, Nichan, Moegi. It brought a huge smile on Moegi when she saw her leader's expression brightened. She also couldn't help but grin triumphantly when Naruto set the bags he carried down and gave her a hug, lifting her off the ground. Moegi-chan, it's great to see you, he replied as he picked up the girl, unaware that the girl was blushing up a storm. Put her down, Hanabi shouted, surprised that the guy just scooped up her best friend. The blonde needed some etiquette lesson. A man should not lift a girl in such a manner. It was inappropriate. But Moegi didn't care. She returned her leader's affectionate hug, relishing the attention she was being given. She could feel his hard muscle around her body and she couldn't help but blush at such intimate contact. Oh, PPSS. Sorry about that, Moegi-chan, I guess I kind of overreacted. Naruto apologized as he put her down, which caused Moegi to whine a little. It's okay, leader. I missed you a lot. Moegi replied as she blushed. I mean, the Konohamaru Corps has missed you a lot. She added. So what have those two knuckleheads been up to lately? Have they been causing any trouble? Naruto laughed, remembering the Konohamaru Corps and the trouble they get themselves in. It's funny how the people who he tended to get along with were younger than him. He treated the trio like his own siblings. Since no one had ever wanted to play with him as a child, he had devoted his early teen years to play with the trio, trying to catch up on what he had missed. He never cared what the villagers thought of him. He wasn't doing anything wrong and they can all burn in hell as far as he was concerned. You know them quite well, Hanabi commented while Moegi tried to defend her comrades. No, they're quite well, leader. Actually, we have all been working really hard. Moegi defended as she waved her arms around, trying to convince Naruto not to take her best friend's words seriously. Naruto merely chuckled. It's alright, Mo-chan. There's no need to defend them. I was like them when I was younger, remember? Boys will be boys after all. Hanabi simply sniffed in disdain at the blonde's reasoning. A typical response from someone like him. Moegi, on the other hand, was relieved. She had thought that Naruto would be upset with Konohamaru and Udon if he found out all the pranks the two boys were part of while he was gone. Tell you what, Mo-chan, why don't I treat you guys for ice cream? We can catch up and tell me what those two boys have been up to and I can make amends to your friend here. He was in no rush after all and he was curious as to what his two disciples had been up to while he was gone. Hanabi wanted to protest but couldn't. The blonde had somehow stumbled upon her weakness for sweets. Something she and Moegi shared in common. Besides, you can never turn down free food, especially if the blonde was trying to make it up to her. Can we buy Chan? Can we? Moegi asked excitedly. It was more than she can hope for. Her leader taking them out like for old time's sake. Very well. Hanabi resigned, pretending that Moegi had strong-armed her into agreeing when in fact, she had already decided to go. Yosh. Then let's go. Naruto cried out in glee, as he picked up the bags he had put down. Never thought you'd be interested in schoolgirls, Naruto. Came a sarcastic feminine voice. Whatever shall forehead girl say? Naruto turned around only to face a svelte blonde known as Yamanaka Ino. Ino had just finished her shift at the flower shop and had decided to head back to the inn when she saw Naruto. While she had no interest in the blonde, she was a bit curious as to why Naruto would be spotted with the genin girls. Especially Hinata's younger sister Hanabi. It's not what you think. Naruto automatically replied, afraid of what Sakura might think of the situation. Oh, so I didn't hear you right when you asked these cute girls to go to the ice cream parlor. Ino teased as she eyed the two younger girls. She immediately recognized Hinata's younger sister Hyuga Hanabi and raised a speculative eyebrow. Hinata's sister was known as antisocial and was only seen in Moegi's company. Moegi, she had the pleasure of knowing from the various stories Sakura had told her. It was apparently this cute girl that taught Naruto the dreaded puppy dog eyes. She then briefly wondered what Naruto would look like when using the puppy dog eyes trick. It must be really powerful considering he gets away with a lot when he uses it against Sakura and Tsunade, that is until they counter it with their love taps. She gave the two girls a once-over. Hanabi was the epitome of what a blossoming woman should be. The way she stood demanded respect and reeked of high class and status. She was attractive in her own right, with long ebony hair, pearl skin and the haunting pale lavender hue eyes. It was a total contrast to her friend Moegi with her orange hair tied in a high ponytail, carefree smile and a noticeable body. It seemed that puberty had hit this girl early. She already had a sizable chest. Both females were already blossoming into women and she doubts Naruto had not noticed these changes. Moegi bristled at the other blonde. How dare she make her leader fluster and make her leader reconsider his offer? She will be damned if she let the other woman make Naruto have second thoughts. What is it to you anyway? Moegi replied back, glaring at the other female. Jealous because no one invited you. Moegi replied back in a sweet saccharine voice. Hanabi observed her best friend and the other girl argue. She had never seen Moegi's aggressive side before, which was entertaining for her. Ino didn't take the jibe well. I'll have you know, little girl, that I fight off guys' offers all the time. Really? Where are they exactly? Moegi challenged. She fueled Ino's annoyance more when she began to look around for any guys that proves Ino's statement. Girls. There's no need to fight. Ino, why don't you come with us as well? Naruto replied, trying to defuse the whole situation. I don't have time to babysit with you, Naruto. Ino replied back, making sure that Moegi knew she aimed the insult at them. But since you're asking, why not? She replied back before linking her arm with his. Knowing that the other girl would fume. Moegi watched Ino with murder in her eyes. Ino watched the other girl fume and smirked at her triumph. Hanabi watched the whole scene in silence while Naruto was left confused. Honestly, kid, the things you get yourself into. Kyuubi commented as he watched Naruto get dragged off by Ino, followed closely by the two younger females as they made their way to the ice cream parlor. In a short distance away, Kakashi watched his former ward being dragged by Ino, followed by an irate Moegi and a very amused Hanabi. This is interesting, Kakashi commented. It seemed Naruto has a way with the ladies the same way Yondaime had. Before shrugging it off and returning his attention to his book. This is more interesting. Before he began to blush and giggle at the passage he just read. You want us to what? Udon said in disbelief as he stared at the older nin. You heard me, or are you guys too chicken to even proceed? Kiba taunted, seeing the three boys' reaction. Look, Naruto has been training with Jiraiya-sama, right? The three boys nodded. Kiba began to have an inner conflict of morals versus fun value as he studied the three genins. But when he started to feel his headache, which in turn was caused by the two loud mouths to begin with, whatever guilt he felt quickly disappeared. The issue was resolved quickly as he grinned mischievously. Do you know the reason why Jiraiya-sama is so tough? The boys looked at each other, looking for one another for the answer, but came up with nothing. They knew Jiraiya was one of the greatest Sanins. As to how he achieved such greatness was really something they never knew. Sure, he was strong and tough and had a legion of powerful jutsus backing him up, but was that the real reason he was tough and became a Sannin? What was Jiraiya like when he was around their age? It's because part of being a ninja is the ability to be stealthy and sneaky. Able to pass the enemy lines without being detected, that's why. Kiba explained. He had heard Naruto's stories about Jiraiya. He was sure that Jiraiya was a pervert at heart, just like many shinobi males and some females from the stories he's heard. But what does this have to do with anything? Udon was brave enough to question. It seems very illogical to him. The calculations are all wrong somewhat. You see boys, it's like this. To prove just how great a ninja are the two of you, or should I say the three of you, you will go through a series of tests. This is also the same. Why, I remember undergoing the very same test not long ago. Kiba chuckled as he remembered he and the guys tried to do the same thing 3 years ago when the inn was officially declared as the Kunoichi Inn. The inn itself was not in the best of shape. The owner had decided to sell the place, and Tsunade had decided to purchase the inn where a couple of Kunoichis began to move in. Because the initial residents were females, it was decided to make the inn an all-female dormitory for Kunoichis. Since the inn was the first all-female dormitory, it had acquired a lot of response from the male nins. Many distinguished shinobi male youths wanted to prove themselves by breaking through the inn and gathering the Kunoichi's panties. Sadly, no one had yet to succeed. It all started off as a drunken dare for Kiba and the rest of their group, consisting of Shikamaru, Shino, Neji, Choji and Lee. They were arguing about who was the best shinobi in Konoha when the topic of the Kunoichi Inn came up. The youths' male pride began to flare brightly that day, as each one claimed they would be able to pull off a simple panty raid. But sadly, it didn't shine brightly enough. Their asses were handed back to them on a silver platter. To make matters worse, their boxers and underwear ended up being hanged in the public square for everyone to see. It was then that the challenge and the tradition of attempted panty raids began. But senpai, no one has ever succeeded in the panty raids. Konohamaru pointed out. He remembered the stories his tutor Ebisu, who's a closet pervert and private tutor, about the badly attempted attempts. The older Junins such as Kakashi, Gai, Asuma, Katetsu, Genma and etc., had enough sense not to mess with the Kunoichis because despite their level of skill and rank, they're still a force to be reckoned with. So are you chickening out? Kiba asked with a maniacal grin. This was the perfect blackmail material for the troublesome trio. It will certainly put a stop on their constant boasting on who's the best argument. It certainly put them in their places that day when they did the same thing. Look, senpai, don't get us wrong. We're not cowards, but that doesn't mean we're stupid. Inari pointed out. Besides, if his mom found out, he'll get an earful, not to mention what his crush would say if this leaked out. Listen, boys. For as long as the inn has become the home of the Kunoichis, it had been the shinobi male's long-standing tradition to at least try and infiltrate the place. While it is true that none has yet to succeed, it doesn't mean it's impossible. I mean, I bet Naruto would be impressed if you guys tried. Kiba encouraged them, though he wasn't really sure if Naruto would even condone the idea of panty raids. Even Naruto had his limits. But a prank was a prank, and Kiba was sure Naruto would appreciate this one. From one troublemaker to another. The world is at peace and balanced. The three boys seemed to consider his words. The prospect of gaining Naruto's attention was something they all wanted. He was their hero and idol. Something like this would surely impress him, right? Kiba decided to move in for the kill. Tell you what, boys, I'll even come and assist you guys. You don't necessarily have to do it today. Think it over. Sleep on it. Then come and find me when you're all ready to become men. Kiba remarked. His last words seemed to trigger something in the three boys. He already knew they won't refuse. They've fallen into his trap. This weekend. Konohamaru spoke up. We'll do it this weekend. Konohamaru spoke up with eerie determination. Inari nodded. For once agreeing with his rival, sharing the same determination. Udon on the other hand sighed. He doesn't want to do it, but knowing his best friend, he will eventually be dragged into it. Excellent. Kiba grinned sinisterly, as he rubbed his hands together. This will be so much fun. Meanwhile, at the ice cream parlor, Naruto was embarrassed being flanked by such cute and attractive girls. He had been getting looks from a couple of people as they walked down the streets of Konoha. Nothing new really, but he swore that they were looking his way with envy. It was the same when they entered the ice cream parlor. Many male customers looked at him with disdain, which seemed to be amplified when they saw who accompanied him. Naruto spotted an empty booth and led the girls there. As soon as they reached the booth, he waited for the girls to sit. Hanabi sat down on the left side of the table beside Moegi while Ino sat on the right side. The booth could sit 6 people and was ideal for customers to relax and hang out with their friends. Moegi didn't want to sit next to Ino but realized her mistake when she realized that Naruto wouldn't sit next to her since it would be unfair for Ino to sit by herself at the other side of the table. Naruto placed himself next to Ino giving her a sly smirk of triumph which made Moegi frown, but dismissed her look since this means she was adjacent to Naruto. "So girls, what would you like?" Naruto asked them. It had been a long time since he had visited the ice cream parlor. The owner was a kind old woman he had met years ago. It was a few places he could go to. The owner never turned him away, unlike many of the business establishments in Konoha. It became one of his favorite places to go to, coming second to Ichiraku's. The old woman, Mrs. Tanaka, had treated him kindly. Probably unaware to what he really is or simply ignored the vicious gossip about him. He wondered how she was doing. He hasn't seen her for so long and he was determined to seek her out and speak to her for old time's sake. "Cookies and cream," Hanabi responded without much emotion. Inside she was giddy. Back at home she was never allowed to indulge on treats. She was on a strict diet, ensuring that the only foods that were served to the clan are the only ones that will help and strengthen her body. "Strawberry sundae with whipped cream," Moegi replied back animatedly. Naruto merely chuckled. "With a cherry on top, right, Mo-chan?" Remembering Moegi's taste in ice cream, Moegi simply blushed. Her leader remembered. Hi, how about you, Ino-chan? What would you like?" Naruto asked, turning his attention to the female beside him. Ino, on the other hand, was having an internal debate. She only agreed to accompany them since the other girl irritated her and she wanted to get on the girl's nerves. It worked, but now she was unsure. The sweets they sold here would probably be full of calories and would ruin her diet. Her body didn't look this good without a good reason. What the other girls ordered seemed really nice, but she wasn't really familiar with this place. She was used to low-fat yogurts as treats. "Do they sell nutritional shakes here?" Ino asked tentatively. She could have sworn she saw Hanabi winced at her words. "Hi," Naruto replied back. Spotting a menu on the table, he handed it to her. "There should be a list of the stuff there," he supplied helpfully. Hanabi winced as she heard Ino's answer. Nutritional shakes were abundant in her home. It was a rare luxury to have since her clan was adamant on having food they feel wouldn't be sufficient to encourage their strength. On top of that, the shakes they were served didn't really taste all that nice compared to the ones they sold here. Hearing Ino mention nutritional shakes leaves a bland taste in her mouth as she remembered the taste of her clan's version. Ino read the contents of the menu and was shocked to find a variety of sweets they served here. "I think I'll have the berry special with skim milk instead of its usual," Ino replied back. It sounded very appealing. "Yosh, I'll be right back," Naruto replied back as he went to the counter to give his order. Leaving the 3 girls with themselves, he approached the counter and waited to be served. He kept an eye out for Mrs. Tanaka, the elderly woman and owner of the place. She would usually work and serve customers, relishing the time to talk to her patrons, sometimes discussing what they'd like to have and encouraging them to create and make their own version of ice cream and treats. He chuckled when he remembered suggesting to have ramen-flavored ice cream be added to the menu. She chuckled in reply. She had turned his idea down but spared his feelings. "If I had ramen-flavored ice cream, Ichiraku would lose his #1 favorite customer." Mrs. Tanaka replied to him. Mrs. Tanaka could have outright declined his idea and even put him down for suggesting such a ridiculous notion, but the response he got made his heart swell. She had spared his feelings and didn't make fun of him. Something that he had always respected and loved about her. "What will you have today?" asked a familiar feminine voice, startling Naruto from his reverie. making him blink a couple of times to get his thoughts in order. "I'll have," he began but caught his breath as his eyes settled on the waitress that was to serve him. Their eyes met in recognition. It was her. The woman from the club. Oh crap, Kin thought to herself. What in the world was he doing here? She had not expected to see him again. Especially today. "It's you," Naruto replied back, as he rudely pointed at her. She sighed. "Hi to you too." A little embarrassed at his reaction, Naruto chuckled in embarrassment. "Sorry. Got shocked, that's all. I never expected you be working here. I thought you worked at Kunai Club," he asked curiously. She looked totally different from before. For one thing, she was decently dressed. She was wearing a simple white blouse and was wearing a pale pink apron while holding a small notepad and pen in her hands. Her hair was neatly braided and stood proudly behind the counter. Kin studied him as she contemplated on her reply. She really didn't want to explain herself to the blonde. She was working here as a personal request by Yuko, the owner of the place. She owed the old woman. She had been seriously ill lately and she was indebted to her for taking care of her in her dire time of need. Long story. Now what will you have, Blondie? Kin asked, trying to maintain her professionalism. She was working after all. She was ashamed to admit it, but she had forgotten his name. Naruto quickly caught on to her aversion of the topic and simply left it be. The girls were probably waiting for their orders. "Could I please have 1 cookies and cream ice cream, 1 strawberry sundae with whipped cream and cherry of top, 1 berry special shake but with skim milk and 1 Rocky Road ice cream deluxe special?" Kin looked at him and the order she had just taken. Small, medium or large? It was a big order for someone who was by himself as she eyed the blonde curiously. "I'll have them medium please, except for the Rocky Road. I want a large one for that," he answered, then noticed her look. "Oh, it's not for me. Well, the Rocky Road is, but the rest are for my friends." He then pointed at the booth where Ino, Moegi and Hanabi sat as he blushed. Kin looked at the booth he pointed at and found 3 attractive females. 1 svelte blonde that looks about their age, and 2 younger girls that looked the age of 14 to 15. One with ebony hair that rivaled her own hair when it comes to the silkiness and shine, and the other a orange-haired girl with already a sizable chest for her age. Kin raised an eyebrow. So the blonde in front of her was ladies' man. She should have known, judging from his gorgeous physique and those big blue eyes of his. She cursed her luck once again. Why is it that the blonde was always surrounded by beautiful women? Naruto watched her reaction, but found he couldn't read her. She masked her features well. He wondered if she used to be shinobi, judging from the way she was able to control her emotions. He could tell something bothered her but didn't know what it was. "Right then, I'll be right back with your orders," Kin replied back before turning away to prepare his order. "You still haven't told me your name, you know," Naruto pointed out. "It's not that important," Kin replied back as she walked away from him. Why would he like to know my name for anyway? Wasn't the girls with him enough? She thought as she began preparing his orders. Moegi, Hanabi and Ino were making idle chit-chat as they waited for Naruto. Surprisingly enough, Ino and Moegi set their differences aside when Naruto left their table to get their order. They began talking about what was happening at the academy and what had changed since Ino and her other peers has left. Hanabi was responding well to Ino's questions while Moegi seemed bored talking about school. "I wonder what's taking him so long." Moegi sighed as she watched Naruto talk to woman at the counter. She had long black ebony hair, similar to Hanabi. It was currently braided and rested at the middle of her back. She also noted that the girl was very attractive to be working in such a place. "I think he is flirting with the waitress," Hanabi replied back when she caught her best friend staring at the loud blonde. She would have referred to his last name, but Moegi had failed to mention what his last name was. She was certainly not going to use his first name since that implied that she knew the blonde personally. Ino followed their gaze and saw that Naruto blushed in embarrassment at the attractive waitress and pointed at them. He seemed to be protesting about something, judging from the way he was waving his arms around as if to deny something. Jealousy rolled off Moegi in waves, which was felt by her companions. Her Naruto Nichin was acting very suspicious around the waitress. Wait till I tell forehead girl about this. Ino stated out loud as she grinned widely. Naruto Nichin wouldn't do such a thing. Moegi defended her idol, though kept a close eye on him just in case. It was probably the other girl who was flirting with her Nichin. Then how come you're radiating chakra? Hanabi playfully pointed out. She had never really seen Moegi behave in such a way before and found it rather amusing and refreshing. Moegi was always so bubbly and happy all the time that it often grated on her nerves. It was good to see that there are things that affects her best friend. The girls then began to argue when their line of vision were suddenly blocked by 3 males. Hi there girls. Mind if we joined you? Hanabi scoffed. Moegi frowned and Ino was indifferent. Sorry, we're waiting for someone. Moegi replied back. Ah, come on. If you'd like, we'll buy you some desserts. One of the boys replied back. Sorry guys, our companion is already buying us one. Ino replied back, dismissing the guys. She had been long used to the many attention she gains from guys trying to ask her out on dates. The guys were about to protest when a feminine voice interrupted them. Is there a problem here? Standing behind them was another attractive female giving off a very dangerous aura. One who was carrying a massive battle fan. We were just leaving. Right guys? The guy replied back as he backed away from the booth with his friends. The girl was attractive, but judging from the dangerous aura she was giving out, she was not worth the trouble. Tamari merely scoffed as she watched the guys left with their proverbial tails between their legs. She had spotted Ino while walking past the parlor and noticed the look the 2 younger girls were giving at the 3 guys, expressing their displeasure, and decided to intervene. You ladies all right? Tamari turned her attention to her fellow resident and her 2 younger companions. We're fine, thank you. Moegi replied back, amazed at the way the other blonde female handled the situation. She was awed by her. She looked and acted so cool. Ino spared the other blonde a smile to express her gratitude, but inside she felt slighted. She had the situation under control, but the other blonde had to come and ruin it. The other blonde had undermined her abilities again. Would you like to join us, Tamari-san? Why not? Tamari shrugged as she sat down beside Ino. She felt tired with all the paperwork she had to do at the Hokage Tower. So who are your friends? We're not friends. Both Ino and Moegi cried out in unison, making Hanabi shake her head. My name is Hyuga Hanabi and my friend here is Moegi. Hanabi introduced. Best friend. Moegi corrected her, which made Hanabi unceremoniously roll her eyes. Tamari smirked. So if you're not friends, then how come you're gathered here? She asked curiously. Excuse you, but I think it's rude to question our presence without introducing oneself. We did introduce ourselves after all. Hanabi interrupted. Tamari stared at the black-haired Hyuga, as realization hits her. This was supposed to be Hinata's younger sister. Giving her a once-over, she would have kicked herself for not realizing sooner. The girl bleeds off an air of social snobbery. A typical personality trait of every Hyuga, which thankfully Hinata never inherited and Neji grew out of. Tamari fought the urge to twitch at the other girl's high-handedness but recomposed herself and answered her question. My name is Subaku Tamari. She answered. Sorry about my best friend's rudeness, Tamari-san, you'll get used to her after a while. Moegi replied back to Tamari, earning her a sniff of disdain from Hanabi. So are you going to answer my question now? Tamari asked, still curious as to why Ino was hanging out with the 2 genin girls. Perhaps they were asking Ino some advice on what it was like to be Kunoichi. Well, you see, Moegi was about to answer but was caught off by Naruto's arrival. Naruto approached the booth with the tray of treats he had ordered and paid for. He had again failed to gain the waitress name, but he did find out that Mrs. Tanaka was not well. He wondered if he should come over and visit her. He was surprised, however, to see Tamari had joined them. He placed the tray at the table. He grinned widely at her. Great to see you, Tamari-chan. Noticing Naruto, Tamari felt sheepish. She had yet to apologize for her behavior at the training grounds. It was made worse when she found out that he got in trouble from Hokage-sama. She had learned all this when she overheard Shizune and Kurenai were talking about him outside the Godime's office. She went to the tower to organize some papers with Shikamaru after her awful behavior at the training grounds, when she happened to pass them and overheard. She felt guilty for treating the blonde badly when he had saved her from a nasty fall. She wanted to apologize to him, but every time she tried, she felt embarrassed and simply walked away. She was not used to apologizing to anyone and admit she was wrong. So unconsciously she had began avoiding him. Now it seemed she had been caught. "Hi Naruto." Tamari greeted before getting up. "Well, it was nice to meet you girls, but I guess I better head off to the inn now," she replied as she turned to the rest of the girls and bid a hasty farewell. But before she could make her escape, Naruto grabbed hold of her wrist. "Wait, Tamari-chan. Why don't you join us?" Ino watched the two with veiled eyes. It was weird. Now that she thought about it, Tamari had been avoiding Naruto for the past couple of days. Not really staying in the same room with him for an extended amount of time. "Yes, Tamari-chan. You said you would," Moegi helpfully pointed out. She had heard stories from the other genin girls about what an awesome Kunoichi Tamari was, and she would like to be able to spend time with her and know if the rumors about her held any truth. Tamari looked at her wrist where Naruto held her softly but firmly. Then made a fatal mistake of looking in his eyes. He was using the look. The dreaded puppy dog eyes look. All protest died in her lips as she drowned in his blue orbs. She tried to look for help but found that the girl Moegi used the same move on her, rendering her powerless. Ino was amazed at the strength of dreaded puppy dog eyes. So this was the eyes that renders even the mighty Tsunade-sama herself powerless. She thought to herself. She had never seen it in action before. She could almost feel the helplessness Tamari felt under those eyes. She herself felt like she was melting and she wasn't even the primary target. She herself felt entranced by his big blue soulful eyes, which she had to wrench her gaze away. She noticed that Hanabi herself, the infallible Hyuga, was deeply affected, judging by rosy hue that graced her cheeks. In the end, Tamari succumbed to him. She found herself seated beside him. Ino sat on his left, while she sat on his right, making him seat in between them. Naruto helpfully began to pass each of the girls' orders. When he noticed something wrong. "Gomen, Tamari-chan. I didn't get you any." He apologized as he rubbed the back of his head. Before looking at his big bowl or Rocky Road ice cream as an idea struck him. He then placed the bowl in between them. "Would you like to share it with me, Tamari-chan?" Naruto asked as he scooped a spoonful of ice cream and offered it to the stunned girl. "Say ah." Tamari was stunned as well as the other girls at the table. She looked at Naruto and at the spoonful of ice cream in front of her. She was about to reprimand him for his behavior and outright refuse him when she saw the ice cream about to drip on her clothes. So without any hesitation, she decided to accept his offer. She heard the gasp the other girls at the table. She took the spoonful ice cream into her mouth and was surprised by the sudden assault of its sweetness explode in her taste buds. She never really had this version of chocolate ice cream before. To her, chocolate ice cream needs no enhancement, but now she was proven wrong. The chocolate melted into her mouth, coupled by the chocolate syrup, leaving the soft marshmallows and nuts which she chewed. There were no words to describe its sweetness, coupled by how the sweet treat was offered to her. Naruto merely grinned as he watched her savor the ice cream. He himself was fond of Rocky Road. He saw the other girls' reaction and had interpreted it wrong. He had thought that the other girls also wanted to taste his ice cream. He turned to his side to see Ino's gaping mouth with her eyes almost out of its sockets. Her mouth was moving up and down but with no words coming out of it. Again Naruto took a spoonful of his ice cream and this time held it up to Ino. "Your turn, Ino-chan, say ah," he cooed. As he drew the spoonful of ice cream towards Ino. Ino was surprised by Naruto's action, just like Tamari was. She looked at Naruto and the spoonful of ice cream he's offering, like it was a snake ready to strike. She was adamant in taking his offer because of the calories that the spoonful of ice cream entailed. She then noticed the proximity of the spoon and the risk of getting dripped on by ice cream. So, like Tamari, she opened her lips and accepted his offer. The burst of sweetness in her tongue was almost too much for her pleasure senses to decipher. She had never tasted anything so good. Because of her strict diet, she was used to eating such bland foods, but right now she realized that all those years of dieting had almost made her missed out on such a delicious experience, and to think that the person to bring such wonderful experience was none other than Uzumaki Naruto himself was something she found unbelievable. Naruto wore a massive grin as he observed the two blondes' reaction. Satisfied that they were enjoying themselves and knowing that he caused such enjoyment, Naruto then turned to the two girls seated in front of him and scooped up some more ice cream. Moegi didn't hesitate to take his offer. Relishing the intimacy her leader was showering her. It brought about memories of them spending time together. But in her particular reverie she blocked out everyone else, leaving only her and the blonde Adonis before her as she began to drift to her own little world of daydreams. Hanabi dignifiedly gawked at the women she was with. She couldn't believe how the blonde male had managed to coax her companions to partake in such an intimate display. She resigned herself to hold herself in a more dignified manner. So before Naruto could even scoop another spoonful of his ice cream and hold it for her, she beat him to it. Hanabi scooped up a spoonful of his ice cream using her own spoon and ate it. Hanabi gave him a satisfied smirk of self-triumph as she watched his confused reaction. She then scooped a spoonful of her own cookies and cream ice cream and exaggeratedly ate it, putting on a show as she leisurely took her time to eat one spoon of ice cream. But she was soon to learn to expect anything, especially when it came to the number one surprising ninja. As she scooped another spoonful of her ice cream, she froze when the ice cream never made it into her waiting mouth. Instead, she was met by those intense blue eyes of his. She saw his eyes dance in delight as he withdrew his head away. Her spoon suspended in her hand in mid-air, which was now empty. "Wow, Hanabi-chan. Your ice cream tastes great too," Naruto replied back as he sat back to his seat. The three girls gawking at him while he licked his lips. Hanabi looked at her spoon, now empty, and back at the smirking blonde. He had leaned over and ate her ice cream just when she was about to eat it. He had placed his lips against her spoon. "Would you like to try mine, Naruto-nichan?" Moegi asked as she offered her spoonful of ice cream to the blonde. "Sure, Mo-chan," Naruto replied back in delight as he tried Moegi's strawberry sundae. He then wondered why the two younger girls began to blush uncontrollably when they continued to eat their respective ice cream. He instead turned his attention towards Ino and Tamari. "You guys want some more of mine?" he asked. Glad that he ordered the large deluxe special for his one. He watched the other two girls nod in embarrassment, turning red as well. "Naruto, you have cream on your lips," Tamari helpfully pointed out. Soon all four girls began to blush as his tongue darted out and licked the cream off his lips. Such an intimate display began to spark the four girls' imaginations run wild. "I wonder what's wrong with them," Naruto wondered as he continued to observe his companions. "I have to hand it to you, Kit. You're pretty smooth," Kyuubi replied back as it cackled in delight at Naruto's effect on the females. "Who asked for your opinion?" Naruto replied back to Kyuubi. "Take it as a compliment, Kit. Kami knows it's rare that even I, the great fox, is amazed by how you seduce these vixens." "Seduced? What the hell are you talking about, Kyuubi? You're not making any sense at all. I applaud you for your innocence, Kit. Maybe someday Jiraiya and I could finally corrupt you, and then, that's where my fun would truly begin." Kyuubi replied back as it cackled in maniacal laughter. "Stupid fox," Naruto replied back as it began to ignore Kyuubi's resonating laughter in his head. Before returning to the task at hand, Ino tried to hide her embarrassment by taking a big sip of her shake, trying to cool herself down, while she watched Naruto offer his ice cream to Tamari. "Here you go, Tamari-chan, Say ah. Ah. Tamari replied back. Before Naruto turned his attention to Ino. Okay. Ino-chan, your turn. Say ah. Both Moegi and Hanabi blushed and shared one thought as they looked at the blonde and their respective spoons. An inadvertent kiss. They both thought every time they ate their ice cream. Moegi, your turn. Say ah. Ah. Meanwhile at the counter, Kintsuchi watched them with keen eyes. One thought in mind. What a playboy. She huffed and went to the back of the restaurant, leaving the rest of the employees to their work. She gritted her teeth as she began to mumble to herself. They could have just asked for extra spoons instead of carrying on like that. After half an hour later, Naruto and his companions had finished their desserts and bid their farewell to each other. Moegi insisted that Naruto should stay longer but was disappointed when Naruto turned down her offer. Sorry Mo-chan, but I have to go. There are still a lot of things I need to do. Tell you what, next time I promise I will spend more time with you in the core. Naruto replied back as he patted Moegi's head, giving her one of his foxy grins. Come on Moegi-chan, we need to go. My father will be unhappy if I arrived late at home. Hanabi coaxed her friend. It had been an experience to remember for her. She even managed to get his name, a name she was sure to remember. It was nice to meet you, Uzumaki-san. Hanabi bowed politely. Perhaps we will see each other again. Naruto gave her one of his foxy grins. Of course Hanabi-chan, and please call me Naruto. I think after today, we could exclude the formalities. He had a great time with them today. Very well Naruto. Hanabi paused for a while, before adding, san, at the end. Slightly coloring as she did so. Before pulling her friend away as they walked out of the ice cream parlor. What a weird girl. Kind of reminded me of Hinata when we were at the academy before. Naruto commented. They were sisters after all, minus the finger fidgeting thing that Hinata used to do whenever he used to talk to her. So ladies, shall we go home? Naruto turned his attention to his fellow blonde tenants as he picked up the bag of roof tiles he bought from the hardware store. They were already outside of the ice cream parlor when he stopped walking, remembering something. What's wrong Naruto? Ino asked him, curious as to why the blonde suddenly stopped walking alongside them. Do you think the rest of the girls would also like some ice cream? Naruto asked them. Both Ino and Tamari blushed, remembering the intimate way Naruto fed them ice cream. Then began to picture him doing the same with the rest of Kunoichi-in's residents. What? Naruto asked, confused as he watched his companions. They were blushing again. Girls are so weird, he whispered to himself, before shaking his head and resumed walking, making the other two girls chase after him.